A lot of the work and conversation we've been having is what I would call tip of the iceberg solutions to the after pandemic world and workplace. I'm going to suggest that the real work is below the waterline. I had a conversation today with a colleague who's working with some distributors about putting together a package to address the post-pandemic needs. The need to reimagine space, to leverage technology, use software and data to be more informed about how space is being used and user preferences, to optimize the real estate portfolio, to be able to provide turnkey contracting to make it more efficient and more agile in terms of coming in and changing space and layout, for example, to include more hospitality environments, the whole challenge of decommissioning, workplace strategy. What does workplace strategy look like in a hybrid world? And then I added the digital signage that companies like Four Winds plays that provide back-end database connection to letting us know what the business is doing at any point in time, or giving us a dashboard on the energy use. All these environmental cues to help us make the experience in the workplace better. I don't disagree with any of that. However, I think the real work is below the waterline. So let me explain what I mean. We have experienced what I would call a Kodak moment. Kodak was a company that was the leading company in terms of photography and film. They were also the inventors of digital photography in 1975. However, their whole model paradigm, their whole business was dependent on selling rolls of film. The camera was a loss lead item, it was the film, and it was the processing that they made their money. Because the beginning or the birth of digital was so poor in quality, it was hard to imagine, they ignored it. But then something like Moore's Law began to take effect. So digital cameras and digital processing got better at a compounded rate of doubling every 18 to 24 months at equal or less than the same cost. So that in 1992, when Casio introduced its first consumer camera, it was all over for Kodak. It just took another 20 years for it to all collapse. Well, we've had that existential moment. The pandemic took us off the treadmill, showed us that we could work remotely, and now we haven't figured out the right balance or mix. So our work needs to now go into what is work, the ontological question. What's the meaning of work? What does it look like? What's the new processes? What's the new structure? We're getting into organizational design. When something that fundamental changes, it requires a new decision-making structure. If you read the book Team of Teams by Stanley McChrystal, that's exactly what he ran into when he was in Iraq. He took over command and control organizations that weren't agile enough to do the kinds of missions and adapt to the changing environment that they needed. So they had to create a whole different information access capability and a different kind of decision-making structure that was built around mission intent and empowering the front lines. But that then entailed a whole different training of the leaders of these tactical units and a different kind of integration of skills that they had never had before. So we're in what I consider to be one of those team of teams transition moments. And then there's the employee experience. We've now got to go out and learn firsthand the day in the life. What is that day in the life of an employee who works with us, who has things at home? They've got a whole new rhythm and a whole new standard of living and values that they've adopted. But I don't think we truly understand that. So this is going back to fundamental things the Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons has done, is understanding your client and what they call the client journey, or in this case, the employee journey. Now, the system has rebalanced. It's gotten a certain rhythm. We keep seeing the statistics every week. And the statistics tell us that somewhere between 2.5 and 3 days is what the system is balanced out to. Fridays are a ghost town, Mondays are iffy. So that's the new balance. What we've been trying to do is shift that balance by boosting the incentives or giving punishment for it. The East Coast version is get your butt in the chair by Monday or you're fired. That's calling the crack down side. And then the West Coast is the caving in. You can do whatever you want, come when you want, live where you want. Now, any system, there's two factors. There's the input side and there's the constraint side. We've been focusing strictly on the input side. Better workplace, more demands, what you're going to lose by not coming into the office, what you can gain by coming into the office. All of those are in the input side. And what we've not addressed are the constraints. And the constraints are pretty clear. The number one is commute. That's friction. That gets in the way of people wanting to come in. Number two are distractions. I can't get things done in the workplace, so I go to Starbucks or I go to some other place when I want to get work done. We've got to deal with that friction point. Then there's the meeting. The number of meetings and the quality of meetings is a non-starter for most people. And when we just shift it to the virtual environment, that's even worse. Then the fourth friction point are bad bosses. Freakonomics had a podcast on why there are so many bad bosses, but the pandemic really exposed just how deficient we are in well-trained managers who know how to develop people and play to their strengths versus managers that direct work. These are called task-oriented managers. They can direct, troubleshoot, hold accountability, and that works when you can see people, but it doesn't work when you can't. And then the last element is the stress. Harvard Medical reported that employees say that work is the number one cause of either high or very high stress. So that's another constraint that we're not dealing with. So unless we deal with the below the iceberg areas, the human issues, it doesn't matter what we design on the exterior. I was dealing with a group of companies today that wanted to add hospitality furniture and make the environments feel more like hotel lobbies. But what I countered with is that unless there is a hospitality experience, then the furniture is meaningless. And so I described a hospitality experience. It's like going to one of your favorite restaurants where they know you, they cater to you, and they provide what we call this one-off experience. There are some companies who do that, like GoDaddy, the CBRE headquarters in LA. However, the furniture without the human side of it, it's just furniture in an open area with soft seating. That means we have to reframe what our job is. One example I'm reminded of is the conversation I had with Dave Radcliffe in 2008. He has just retired from Google as their head of real estate. What Dave told me is that our mission is to reduce the friction of work. He didn't say to optimize the real estate portfolio or be efficient in how we deliver services. He said reduce the friction of work. Well, that opens you up to a wide range of seeing problems and tackling them through the toolkit that we have in facilities and design and real estate. It totally reframes our job. Right now, too many of us see our job as providing security or well-maintained systems or commissioning our equipment or whatever it is, but it constrains our ability to see outside those domains. So first job is to reframe what it is we do, what job we really have, who we are, what is our identity. The next is refocus on that human side of the equation and then reimagine what it can be. I have a whole process of doing that. I've written 5 books using the mind shift process of that, going in to environments or situations or systems that are stuck, understanding the nature of what keeps them stuck, then reframing how we address the system, refocusing and reimagining the roles in the system. And then what I've done with the research is turn those into books. Now, if you're interested in how do you spend more time under the waterline addressing those while you're working on the tip of the iceberg, give me a call. We have all arrived at this historic moment, this Kodak moment, this existential question of what is work in a post-pandemic world. I believe that a collective effort, multiple stakeholders with different views and lenses that come together and begin to get our arms around what keeps us stuck, and then go on a journey of finding those outliers, positive outliers. William Gibson, one of my favorite futurists, says the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. There are companies that are already living into the future, at least at some element. Part of our journey is to go find them, understand how they made the transition, bring it back into our own organization, see what applies, recontextualize it, test it, prototype it, and then roll it out in a pilot format. That is what our role is, and that's the opportunity. If we don't approach it like a discovery mission, we will continue to try to do different strategies, different tactics, different tools, but we'll only be playing whack-a-mole where we pound one down, but 2 more pop up on the other side. That's what we've been doing for the last 2 years. I think we can get out of this cycle of whack-a-mole. I'm grateful that I have gone through 5 different research efforts on items that have been stuck for decades and gotten the experience, because I think it's for this moment so that we can reimagine the future of work. We'll continue to put a lot of effort in that tip of the iceberg because that's where our expertise lies. However, I want to remind you, the root word for facility or facilitate comes from the Latin to make easier. That's what David Radcliffe was referring to. That's our job, to make work easier. But we have to go below the waterline if we want to really understand how we do that. Work needs to be completely restructured. The whole value system that we had around work needs to change. We all know it. Now it's time for us to begin that journey. Take care.